All right, today we're jumping into the wonderful and, frankly, wild true story of a man named Gavin Maxwell and his very, very unusual best friend, Mijbil the Otter. A lot of us think of a dog or a cat when we picture a pet. But what if the companion that's just right for you is something else entirely? Well, this is a story about exactly that. A man who found a real, deep friendship with one of the most unexpected creatures you can imagine. So let's meet the man at the center of it all, Gavin Maxwell. He was living in this pretty remote cottage up in the Scottish Highlands, and he was completely heartbroken after his dog passed away. And in that deep quiet and loneliness, this interesting idea started to form. Not another dog, no, something totally different. And that idea really started to look like a possibility when he took a trip to southern Iraq. He found out that the marshes around the Tigris River were just full of otters and that the local people there often kept them as pets. And just like that, the seed was planted. But of course, it wasn't that simple. Maxwell gets stuck in Basra in what sounds like a bureaucratic nightmare. He's just trying to get his mail from Europe, but the days just keep dragging on. We're talking broken phone lines, holidays, more breakdowns. His friend even had to leave without him. Maxwell is just stuck there, waiting, with absolutely no idea that a very special delivery was in the works for him. So after all that waiting, Maxwell's mail finally shows up. But you know what? It wasn't the only thing that was delivered to him that day. Okay, so picture this. You finally get back to your room, and there are two men just waiting for you. And next to them on the floor is a sack, and every now and then it wriggles. The anticipation must have been just off the charts. And there it was. The wait was over. That squirming sack held the very creature he'd been thinking about. A whole new chapter of his life was literally about to crawl out of a bag. Now, when the creature finally came out, it was not what you might expect. It was caked in mud from the marshes, and Maxwell's first thought was incredible. He said it looks less like an otter and more like a tiny dragon from some medieval legend, all covered in these pointed scales of drying mud with this soft chocolate-colored fur underneath. So, you've got a miniature dragon in your bedroom at the consulate. What do? Well, you get to know him. Maxwell named him Mijbil, and that's when the real discovery began. And the transformation was, well, it was incredibly fast. That first day, Mijbil was pretty distant, kind of indifferent. But by the second night, everything changed. He actually came over and curled up in the crook of Maxwell's knees to sleep. The curiosity kicked in, and you could just see that bond starting to form. And soon, Mijbil's true personality just exploded. He was an absolute master of fun. He went crazy for water, of course, but he also had these hilarious little games. His absolute favorite was lying on his back and just juggling marbles on his stomach. I mean, can you picture it? Pure, simple joy. But he wasn't just playful. Mijbil was whip smart. One day, Maxwell sees him wander into the bathroom and follows him. And he just watches, completely amazed, as this little otter figures out how to turn on the faucet all by himself. This was definitely no ordinary animal. And it turns out, Mijbil wasn't just special to Maxwell, he was special to science. Zoologists eventually figured out that he belonged to a species of otter that had never been officially identified before, so they named it right after the man who introduced him to the world, Maxwell's otter. So enjoying your new scientifically important otter buddy in Basra is one thing, but getting him all the way back home to Scotland, that is a whole other challenge. And oh boy, was it about to get dramatic. The first big problem was the airline. The British airline he was supposed to take wouldn't fly animals at all. So we had to find another one, and they had a very strict rule. Mijbil had to travel in a tiny box, no bigger than 18 inches square. For a creature that loves freedom and water, this was basically a recipe for disaster. Maxwell did what he was told. About an hour before the flight, he put Mijbil in the box to get him used to it. He left for a bit, and when he came back, there was just this awful, complete silence. And, that's not the good kind of silence. The scene was just horrific. Mijbil had panicked. In a desperate bid to get out, he had torn the inside of the box to shreds and hurt himself badly. Maxwell had only 10 minutes to get to the airport, and he had to somehow get this poor, whimpering, terrified creature back into that box. But then, on the plane, there's this little moment of grace. Maxwell explains the situation to an air hostess. And she's just incredibly kind. She sees how distressed he is and says, "You know what? Why don't you just keep your pet on your lap?" What a huge moment of relief. But, as Maxwell himself said, he really had no idea what was coming. That moment of relief was about to give way to, well, total and utter chaos. The second that lid comes off, whoosh, Mijbil is gone. He just shoots out of the box and tears down the aisle of the plane. You can imagine the scene. People are shrieking, somebody yells, "A rat, a rat." The whole cabin just erupts into pandemonium as Maxwell is scrambling to catch his furry little friend. And then, right in the middle of all that chaos, it all just stops. Mijbil finds his way back to Maxwell, leaps onto his knee, and just starts nuzzling his face and neck. It's this incredibly touching moment. Even with all the fear and confusion, their bond was the one thing that grounded them both. So after all that drama, they finally made it to London and then onto their home in Scotland. But you can bet an adventure like that has a lasting impact. You see, for Maxwell, that moment back in the consulate bedroom, it wasn't just about getting a new pet. It was the beginning of a lifelong passion. He called it a thraldom to otters, an otter fixation. Mijbil didn't just join his life, he completely reshaped it. Maxwell's story is just such a powerful reminder of how an animal can walk into our lives and completely change our story. It really makes you think, doesn't it? How do the companions we choose, whether they're dogs, cats, or even little otters, help us write the chapters of our own lives?